I wasn't looking to change my life when I took the job. I just needed money. Rent in the city was eating me alive, and my side gigs weren't cutting it anymore. So when I saw an online listing for a ranch hand position in northern Arizona, room, board, and weekly pay included, I figured, why not? I didn't know a damn thing about cattle or ranching, but the ad said, willing to work hard was enough. That's how I found myself standing under the scorching sun, boots sticking in the dirt, waiting for the foreman to come out and size me up. That was the first time I saw him, Cole Hartman. He stepped out of the barn like he'd been carved out of dust and denim, built like a damn brick wall, tall, tan, mid-30s maybe, with arms that looked like they'd been earned fixing fences and breaking horses, not flexing in mirrors. He had a slight limp, the kind that told you he'd been through something, and a voice that didn't bother asking questions twice. "You the new hire?" he asked, glancing me up and down like I was a tractor he wasn't sure would start. "Yeah," I said. "Jason," he nodded once. "You ever thrown hay?" "Nope," shoveled shit. "Not professionally." That made the corner of his mouth twitch. "You know how to take orders?" I learned fast. He stared at me for another beat, then jerked his head toward the barn. "Come on, let's see what you're made of." That first week nearly broke me. Sunrise to sundown, every day. Hauling bales, cleaning stalls, patching fences, learning how to move around animals that outweighed me by 1,000 pounds. The other hands mostly kept to themselves. A few older guys, one kid barely out of high school, but they were friendly enough once they realized I wasn't a total idiot. Cole, though, he kept his distance. He didn't smile much, barely talked unless it was about work, but every once in a while, I'd catch him watching me. Not in a creepy way, just assessing, measuring, and sometimes I'd swear there was something else there, just under the surface, like he was waiting for something. By the second Friday, I was dead on my feet. It was pushing 95 degrees, and we were clearing out a broken section of corral fencing. I was soaked in sweat, shirt clinging to me, when Cole passed me a water bottle and said, "You ever work weekends?" I nodded. "I'll work whenever you need me." That's when he said it. "Good. I've got something I could use help with tomorrow. Pays double." That got my attention. "Double?" He took a slow sip from his own bottle, then said, real casual, "One dirty favor. You in?" I froze. "What kind of favor?" Cole looked at me for a long second. Then he just shrugged and said, "We'll talk after dinner." Then he walked away. I didn't eat much at dinner that night. The cook served up beans, cornbread, and grilled meat like usual, and the other hands were laughing over some joke I didn't catch, but my mind was stuck on those 3 words. One dirty favor. What the hell did Cole mean by that? I caught him looking at me once, just a glance across the table, and then he went back to eating like nothing was hanging between us. But something was. It was thick in the air, quiet and humming. I don't know how no one else felt it. After dinner, I went back to the bunkhouse, paced for 10 minutes, then finally walked out toward the barn, where Cole usually disappeared to after dark. The place was half lit, the overhead light flickering slightly like a scene out of a movie. He was in the tack room, leaning against the wall, arms crossed, sleeves rolled, forearms veined and dusty. "You came," he said, like he hadn't left me hanging all evening. "You said we'd talk." He nodded, pushed off the wall, and walked past me into the main barn. I followed, boots echoing against the packed dirt. He stopped beside a stall, turned to face me, and for a long moment said nothing. Then, "I've been working this ranch since I was 16. This land's all I know. And I've seen all kinds of men come and go." He paused, like he was weighing his next words carefully. "I don't usually ask things like this, but I've been watching you, and I think you can handle it." I cleared my throat. Handle what? He didn't answer with words. Not right away. Instead, he took a step closer. I didn't back up. The smell of him, leather, sweat, a hint of cedar, hit me like a punch. His eyes were steady, unreadable. Then, finally, low and even. "I want to see what you'd do if I put my hands on you." My heart kicked in my chest. "And I'll pay you double," he added, "for one night of not pretending." I stared at him, blinking like I'd been hit with a bucket of ice and fire at the same time. "You serious?" I asked, voice hoarse. "Dead serious," he said. "You can say no. You walk out of this barn, I won't hold it against you. You still got a job come morning." I should have walked. Maybe I was supposed to. But I didn't. Instead, I said, "And if I say yes?" His jaw clenched for a second, then relaxed. "Then I'll make sure you know this wasn't just about the money." There was a long silence after he said that. I could hear the low rustling of the horses in their stalls behind us, the distant hum of cicadas outside. My heart was hammering in my chest, but the rest of me, I felt still. Too still. I should have said something. I should have joked or asked more questions or found some way to diffuse the heat rising between us. But all I did was nod. Not even a word. Just a nod. And that was all Cole needed. He didn't grab me, didn't rush. He moved closer, one step at a time, until he was right in front of me. We weren't touching, not yet, but I could feel the space between us collapse. His hand lifted slowly, like he was waiting for me to flinch. I didn't. He let his fingers rest against my jaw, rough skin against mine, his thumb just barely brushing the corner of my mouth. "You sure?" he asked. I breathed out, "Yeah." And just like that, something shifted. Not in some dramatic, music-swelled kind of way. It was subtle. A tilt of his head. The way his hand moved behind my neck, and then his mouth was on mine. Firm, warm, steady. It wasn't rushed. It wasn't careful either. It was somewhere in between, like two men who'd wanted this longer than they admitted. But neither one was willing to be the first to say it out loud. When he pulled back, he studied me. "You still okay?" I nodded again, breath-catching. He let out a low chuckle, then reached for the latch on one of the empty stalls and swung it open. "Come here," he said, not as an order, not as a test, just an invitation. I followed. The stall was clean, just fresh hay, and a saddle propped on a barrel in the corner. He leaned against the wall and watched me come in, then pushed the door closed behind us. There was a second where we just looked at each other. I think we were both checking to see if the moment had passed. It hadn't. He stepped in again and this time kissed me harder, less hesitantly. One of his hands was on my waist, the other on the back of my neck, pulling me in like he was done waiting. I gripped the front of his shirt, fingers clenching tight in the flannel as I kissed him back. There was hay scratching at my knees, the smell of horses and leather and sweat all around us, and none of it mattered. I wasn't thinking about money anymore. I wasn't even thinking about the job. It was just him. The way his breath hitched when my hand slid under his shirt, the way he bit back a groan when I pressed my body flush against his. He broke the kiss for a second, resting his forehead against mine. "Don't say anything," he whispered. "Not yet." And I didn't. I just let it happen. That night changed everything, but not in the way I expected. I didn't sleep in the bunkhouse. Cole didn't say it, but when we finally stumbled out of that stall, hair messy and clothes half-buttoned, he just motioned for me to follow him back to his cabin. It was small, tucked behind the barn, separate from the main ranch house. Private. When we walked inside, he didn't flick on a light. He just sat down on the edge of his bed, took off his boots, and looked at me like he wasn't sure if he should speak first or wait for me to crack. "You don't have to stay," he said finally, but I stayed. We didn't say much that night. There wasn't a big confessional or some dramatic pillow talk, just breathing, just warmth, just the quiet, magnetic pull between two men who'd spent weeks circling something neither one of them had the language for. The next morning, I woke up early, sunlight spilling through the blinds, and Cole was already dressed, shirtless, jeans on, barefoot. He was standing by the stove making coffee, like this was just another Tuesday, like we hadn't crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. "You snore," he said, glancing back at me with the faintest smirk. I sat up slowly, still groggy. "You offered me double pay," I muttered, rubbing my eyes. "You got what you paid for," he chuckled. "Hell, for what that was, I should have offered triple." I tossed a pillow at him. It hit him square in the back, and For the first time since I met him, he laughed. A real one. Not a grunt. Not a half smile. An actual laugh. And that, weirdly enough, did something to me I didn't expect. It made him human. The next few days were strange. Not bad, just different. We didn't talk about that night. Not out loud. But something had shifted between us. Cole would brush past me a little closer than he used to. I'd catch him watching me over the top rail while I saddled a horse, and this time he didn't look away. He let me catch him. But we also didn't do anything again. Not physically. The other ranch hands didn't notice anything. Or if they did, they kept their mouths shut. Which was fine by me. I didn't even know what this was yet, if it was a one-time thing or something more. One evening, we were riding out to check the north fence, just the two of us, when Cole finally broke the silence. "I wasn't just offering you money," he said, eyes on the trail. "That night. I know. I needed to know if I was crazy." I looked over at him. And? He met my eyes for the briefest second. Still deciding. We reached the ridge where the pasture dropped into the valley, and the horses paused on instinct, sniffing the wind. Cole dismounted, dusted his hands on his jeans, and looked out at the horizon. "You ever think about leaving this place?" I asked quietly. He shook his head. "No, but I've thought about not doing it alone." And just like that, the favor didn't feel dirty anymore. The words hung there between us for a second. Not loud, not forced, just honest. I've thought about not doing it alone. Cole didn't say anything more after that. He turned back toward the horses, gave his mare a firm pat on the neck, and climbed back into the saddle like we hadn't just crossed another invisible line. But something about what he said wouldn't let go of me. I kept replaying it in my head the whole ride back. Not doing what alone? The ranch? Life? Whatever this thing was between us. When we got back to the barn, I unsaddled my horse in silence. Cole stayed behind a little longer than usual, like he was giving me space, or waiting to see if I'd follow. I didn't. Not that night. Instead, I sat on the porch of the bunkhouse, drank a warm beer from the little fridge we all shared, and watched the moon rise over the fields. The night air smelled like hay and dust in summer. I kept thinking about the way he said it, about how little emotion he showed, and how much weight it still carried. Cole wasn't the kind of guy who laid things out clean. He hinted. He nudged. He put things in front of you and waited to see if you'd pick them up. And me? I'd never been good at guessing. 2 nights later, I found myself back at his cabin. I didn't knock. Just let myself in. He was at the kitchen counter, scribbling something in a beat-up ledger. He didn't look surprised to see me. "Beer?" he asked. I shook my head. "No. Just came to talk." He nodded, motioned to the chair across from him. I sat. "I don't know what this is," I said, keeping my voice steady. "But I'm not looking for something casual. I've done that before. Doesn't work for me." He set his pen down. "And I'm not saying we need to label it," I added quickly, "or figure it all out now. If that night meant something to you, I need to know." Cole leaned back in his chair, studied me. Then he said something that surprised the hell out of me. "I'm scared." That was it. No bravado. No slow draw smirk. Just 2 words I never thought would come out of his mouth. I sat there, blinking. He went on. "I've worked this ranch since I was a teenager. I've been with women. I've been in a marriage. I've done everything I thought I was supposed to do. But with you, this is the first time I've wanted to break my own rules." His voice was low, uncertain. And maybe for the first time since I'd met him, I realized how much it had taken for him to say that. I leaned forward, elbows on my knees. "You're not alone in that." Cole looked at me, really looked at me, then nodded slowly. "Good," he said, "because I've got more favors to ask." This time, he smiled when he said it. I didn't leave his cabin that night. Not because something physical happened. It didn't. Not that time, but because when I stood up to go, Cole reached for my hand and said, "Stay." Just like that. One word, like a bridge. I stayed. We sat on his old, worn couch, drinking the last 2 beers in the fridge, our knees barely brushing. The TV was on low, but neither of us was watching. It felt like sitting at the edge of something, and for once, neither of us seemed in a rush to jump. He told me about his past. Not all of it, but enough. He'd been married once to a woman named Tessa, right out of high school. Lasted 5 years. No kids, just 2 people who thought they were supposed to be something they weren't. He said he knew even back then that he was lying to himself, but it took another 10 years and a failed ranch expansion to admit it out loud. He'd been alone ever since. Not because he couldn't find someone, because he didn't want to risk finding the wrong someone again. "You think I'm the wrong someone?" I asked, half joking. Cole glanced at me, eyes sharp even in the dim light. "No," he said quietly. "That's the problem." We didn't kiss that night, but when I woke up tangled in his bed sheets, the window cracked open to let in the smell of hay and sunrise. He was already up making coffee, humming to himself like he hadn't just laid bare the deepest parts of himself the night before. The next few weeks blurred. We worked like usual, long hours, rough hands, dust in our eyes, and sweat under our shirts. But between the chores and the saddle oil, there were these small moments that nobody else saw. His hand brushing my lower back when I walked past. The way he'd stand just a little too close when we were alone. The soft, "See you tonight?" he'd murmur under his breath when the other hands were just out of earshot. And every few nights, I'd find myself at his cabin again. Sometimes we'd talk. Sometimes we didn't say much at all. But there was an ease growing between us. Something real. Something I hadn't felt in years. Then one afternoon, out of nowhere, he asked, "You ever thought about staying longer?" I looked up from where I was hosing down the truck bed. "Like the whole season?" He shrugged. "Longer than that." My chest tightened. I thought this was just a summer thing. Maybe it doesn't have to be. I leaned on the hose, letting the water run into the dirt. "You offering me a full-time job?" Cole wiped his hands on a rag, tossed it in the bed of the truck. "I'm offering you something, just not sure what to call it yet." That night, I didn't sleep much. I lay in bed at the bunkhouse, staring at the ceiling, thinking about what a life here might look like. The work, the land, the quiet. Him. Could I really stay? Would he really want me to? I had no answers, but I knew one thing. I wanted to find out. The next morning, I was up before sunrise. I saddled the horses while the sky was still dark, the stars barely fading as the first light started pushing over the edge of the hills. It was cooler than usual, and I kept my hoodie on longer than normal, pacing a bit as I waited for Cole to show up. My head was still buzzing from his question, from the idea that this wasn't just a summer job anymore, that maybe I wasn't just a favor he paid double for. When he finally showed, he didn't say much at first, just handed me a coffee from the main house and mounted up like it was any other day. But I knew him better now. The tightness in his jaw, the way he avoided eye contact when something was on his mind. I decided not to push. We rode out in silence, checking water lines and fence breaks, the land rolling out in all directions around us like a painting come to life. It wasn't until late morning, while we were resting near the North Ridge, that he finally spoke. "I meant what I said yesterday," he said, eyes on the horizon. I nodded slowly, keeping my voice even. "About me staying?" He gave a short nod. "But not just for work." I waited. He took off his hat, ran a hand through his hair. A rare move for him. He looked younger when he did it, less guarded. "I've been alone a long time, Jason. Not because I wanted to be. Just, I never met someone I could picture being around after the dust settles. Until now." I didn't know what to say to that. My throat felt tight. "I'm not asking for answers today," he added quickly, like he could see the panic rising in my eyes. "Just think about it. What it might look like, You and me. Here. I looked around. The pasture stretching for miles. The sky so wide it made you feel small in the best way. The breeze pushing through the grass like waves. You really think there's a version of this that works? I asked quietly. Out here, just living like this? He looked at me then, full on. I think it's already working. We didn't say much after that. We rode back in silence, but it wasn't heavy. It was settled, like something important had been said and didn't need repeating. That night, I sat out by the corral long after the sun went down. The stars were out, big and bright, and I had a cold beer in one hand and the weight of a possible future in the other. Cole joined me eventually. He didn't say anything, just sat beside me in the dirt, his shoulder brushing mine. After a while, he asked, "You ever think about what you'd be doing if you didn't come here?" I smirked. Probably still broke. Definitely still stuck. You ever think maybe you were supposed to end up here? I didn't answer. I didn't have to. Because in that moment, under that massive sky, shoulder to shoulder with a man who used to terrify me with how little he gave away, I realized something. I wasn't lost anymore. I'd found something worth staying for. I woke to the smell of bacon. It was early. Not ranch early, but early enough, and the light coming through Cole's cabin window had that soft, golden haze to it. For a minute, I just lay there, listening to the faint sizzle of the pan, the clink of ceramic, the low hum of a man who didn't realize he was humming. I pulled on yesterday's shirt and padded barefoot to the kitchen. He was standing there shirtless, sweatpants riding low on his hips, flipping bacon like it was just another morning. No ceremony, no awkwardness. Just a man cooking breakfast for someone he wasn't pretending to keep at arm's length anymore. "Morning," he said without turning. "Smells like cholesterol," I muttered, rubbing the sleep from my face. "Don't worry, I made the eggs healthy to balance it out." We ate on the back steps. Just 2 plates, 2 mugs of coffee, and a view of the fields waking up with the sun. A couple horses trotted lazily in the distance. Birds skimmed low over the grass. Everything was quiet, and for once, the quiet felt good. "I called Roy last night," Cole said eventually, stabbing a piece of egg. "Told him I might need another full-time hand soon." I glanced at him. "You getting ready to fire me already?" He shook his head. "I'm getting ready to give you a reason to stay that has nothing to do with money." I smiled, slow. "You trying to turn this into something real?" He looked over at me, eyes soft in a way I hadn't seen before. "I think it already is." There it was. No grand speeches, no big declarations. Just a simple truth said in a Cole kind of way. Direct, plain, and exactly what I needed to hear. Later that day, after chores and a shared lunch on the tailgate, I went back to the bunkhouse to grab a few more of my things. The guys were lounging around, sweaty from the heat, tossing half-hearted jabs at each other the way ranch hands do. One of them, Jace, the youngest, gave me a look as I passed by. "You moving in with the boss or what?" he asked, half teasing. I paused. "Maybe," I said. "You got a problem with that?" Jace shrugged. "Nah, just didn't see it coming, but makes sense." And that was it. No drama, no whispers behind my back. Just life, ranch life. The kind where nobody cares as long as the job gets done and you don't screw anyone over. That night, Cole and I sat on the porch again, like we always did now, watching the last streaks of color bleed out of the sky. He had one hand around his beer, the other resting on my knee like it belonged there. "You ever gonna stop calling it a dirty favor?" I asked. He smirked. "Depends. You want me to?" I leaned over, kissed him slow and easy. "Nah," I said against his mouth, "long as you keep paying double." He laughed into the kiss. And that was that. I came out to the desert for a job and found something else entirely. A man who didn't say much but meant every word. A life that didn't look like anything I imagined, but somehow fit better than anything I'd known. And a reason to wake up every morning that had nothing to do with money. Just him, Just us. Just real.